Thank you for joining us for the March edition of 3Squares. We really appreciate it. Once again, I am your co-host, Charlie Arnott from the Center for Food Integrity and Look East, with my mission dedicated to making sure the food system stays trustworthy, along with my co-host today, Susan Swally, and Kevin Ryan, as always, for the last 5 years.
I know, it's amazing. Susan Schwally, food and beverage market research, consumer behavior for 3 decades. I'm kind of at large now doing freelance work. Yeah, more to come. You never know where I'm going to pop up.
And you're very pink today.
I'm very pink today. I have camera problems.
We don't know how that happened, but she's very pink.
No one knows.
Rosy cheeks.
Kevin Ryan, Malachi Strategy and Research, helping food companies and retailers and big CPG at the front end of innovation and strategy.
Excellent. And we are so excited today to have a longtime friend and a very respected researcher join us on the podcast. Sherry Frey brings more than 3 decades of industry experience to her role as Vice President Total Wellness at NielsenIQ. So total wellness, that seems like a very big job. With a background in market research, innovation, and consulting, she has elevated clients across the fresh, CPG, and wellness industries, providing forward-thinking insights combined with practical strategies. She's been a featured speaker at many national and international events, including those for the Center for Food Integrity, for which we are very grateful. And she is often sought, not sought out, she's often sought as a media and analyst resource on topics related to consumer health, wellness, and environmental issues. Sherry's views of health and wellness span beyond personal health and wellness, encompassing how we can collectively think about the health of the planet. She's a proud graduate of the University of Nebraska, as am I. Sherry, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here, guys.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you. And as I mentioned, well, before we joined, I was really excited that Sherry said she's often sought as a media person. She's not sought out. We don't seek out. We don't report out. We seek, we report. Just there's no out necessary there at all. So Sherry gave us a laundry list of different topics because her expertise spans so many different categories, and the work that NielsenIQ does is always fascinating across the entire range. But what kind of struck my fancy is the new world of truth and transparency, as that is something we focus on quite a bit. So I'm interested. Tell me more about the new world of truth and transparency in your latest research.
Well, I tell you what, I think, we're really seeing some shifts around how consumers are thinking about trust in brands. And it's shifting across demographic lines, it's shifting across ages. It's just we're kind of in a massive shift right now around just what trust means to consumers, what identifies trust for them, and what that looks like also for brands in the future. So we've been doing a lot of work on just like how do consumers define trust? It's always, consistently been at the top, right? Like product quality and consistency and customer service. And through the years, we've seen this increase of, hey, what are you doing along the supply chain, right? Like, what's your sourcing? What are your ingredients, et cetera? And I think that's the piece when it comes to food in particular that we've just seen a lot of movement here in the last 18 months around, consumers discerning that what you're putting in the food and the healthfulness of the food also plays into their trust of the brand.
Interesting. So, one of the things I was wondering as you were talking about, looking for sourcing, supply chain, of course, always ingredients. Is this trust changing because of how they can get that information? Like before you came on the call, we were talking about, oh, do you actually read the old labels? Now there's so many other ways. So I'm wondering if you could talk about how people are getting the information, how that's enabling them to determine which brands they choose.
Susan, I mean, that's such a great question because we are seeing, like there's just the discovery has changed completely. So when you think about even like whose role trust was in the past, it was the retailer's role, it was the brand's role. But now consumers are discovering products on social media, right? They're being influenced or they're discovering it in a way that then they go to the store and make the purchase. And as we think about, like the growth of these apps, so there's a lot of apps that consumers are using where they're, literally scanning a product and immediately getting a set of, aggregated, these are the ingredients to watch for. This is the nutrition information. So that there's a piece there. And as we think about the future of like technology changing this, I think we're going to, continue to see AI is really going to shift. And I think we we should be thinking about AI from it is just going to be curating products for consumers, right? It's gonna be, we're gonna be as consumers much more passive, and our agents are gonna be working for us and trolling for us and curating based on products. So we again won't even have we will have filters and criteria on what means trust to me, my personalized trust, and then that's what my agent's gonna bring back to me.
It makes me think of if I'm sure you are familiar with like Daniel Kahneman's System One, System Two thinking, this idea of like gut level versus like, I have to research it. And I've always wondered, like, when it comes to things like trust or things like about brand, of course, we all know, and I mean, I've interviewed these, like, what I always like to call unicorns, people who are like, really doing the hard research. Like they're looking at all the brand websites, but like I don't know if that's most people. How many when people are, like system one versus system two, gut level trust versus like research trust, where is that at? Like, is that what most people are do? Where are people at? And like, what is AI gonna do there? Is it really just they're good, trust them kind of thing? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, where do you
Yes.
think that's at?
So I mean I love that because also by the way what we say, right, like, oh yeah, I'm looking at labels or whatever, like no we're not, right? Most of us are not looking at labels, right? We're not
Right.
paying that level of attention. I think the piece one thing that was really interesting for us last year when Red Dye 3 was banned in January,
Mhm.
we were shocked to see how fast the sales of Red Dye 3 went down. Like people
Mhm.
stopped buying. They were so reactive. And we were shocked because we actually don't normally see that level of reaction from consumers. We see
Yeah.
consumers like, oh, okay, there's a regulation and I don't have to worry about this. Um, but by the way, I also need to caveat that that didn't happen in the convenience store channel. It just happened in like total food and bev. So it really was like they
Right.
were paying
Mm.
attention in their like larger purchase, but that not in like impulse sorts of items. Um, so I think there's a level of reaction and a level of attention I don't think we've historically seen
Right.
from a consumer standpoint. But I think the one piece that is happening is trust isn't just about our food right now. We don't trust our media. We don't trust the government. I mean, we did some research where they're obviously with the Tylenol issue last year, we were asking, like, what happens if the government comes out around a specific ingredient? And there's a lot of like, I got to do more research, right? Like, I don't automatically trust what our institutions that we've historically trusted in the past.
Right. Yeah.
So one of the things that I've been thinking about, just kind of playing off Susan's earlier question and your mention of apps, um, we've seen this infinite proliferation of microcultures and an infinite proliferation of channels where people can access any information they want from a source that may or may not be trustworthy, but may or may not align with their. So when is there too much, right? I mean, we did just a little bit of work with our Insight Twins, kind of looking at the opportunity or the potential for 5,000 data points on GS1's new 2D barcode, right? They're going to go from 13 or 15, whatever it is now, to 5,000. And the comfort seeker was like, I'm out. I do not want access to that much information. It's overwhelming. It's too much for me. I just want to buy what's familiar and comfortable to me. So leave me out of the equation. And I mean, I'm just interested in how you see all of this evolving based on the research you've done and just your professional expertise. And Kevin, I'd be interested in your perspective on that too, in terms of, what's the next chapter here in terms of is it going to be apps? Is it going to be labels? Is it just going to be friends and family or the influencers that I follow? Or how does that mix continue to evolve and what do we do about it?
Well, it's interesting when you think about like influencers. Like we have been fascinated to see, especially with younger consumers, how much, I mean, but all of us really, they're influenced by like social media influencers. Like it's really this trust becomes, it's almost like even though they don't know them, it's like they know them, right? So it's the new
Mhm.
version of friends and family where it's like, oh, that this influencer's like me. Now there's a little bit of some mass fascinating things that are happening with de-influencing and influencers that are kind of getting knocked off of their pedestals, but in general, I think that will continue, right? Because this is just like if we look at the bigger element of it, it's community, right? And it's connection and it's like it is how we were thousands of years ago, but like just now with a different technology. I think we're seeing there's going to be early adopters to this, and it is tending to be, the people that are saying that they're using generative AI and the technology more is higher income people, it's younger people, right? So it's exactly who you would expect. What I think we've been surprised at is how many people, I think it's like 58% or something, already today are like, yeah, just serve up my recommendations for me. Like
Yeah.
I trust you. There's like 40% that are like, and go ahead and click purchase, like buy it for me. So there's still a little hesitancy there,
Mhm.
but I think we want that. So I don't know, Kevin, like what are your thoughts?
I agree with you. I think that I've heard a lot of people. I've given talks and stuff, and people are like, "Oh, I've seen the data. People don't trust AI," and I'm like, "No, they don't trust AI, but they trust their AI
Yeah.
because there's a
Like
difference."
Congress,
Because,
right?
well, yes, right, exactly. I trust my, whatever. Yeah, no, I think my explanation for it, at least the way I always think about it, is I don't trust Google, the company, probably to make like grand sweeping things, but I trust my app on my phone to guide me a particular way, and I'll follow it because it helps me and it's more personal. And so the more personalized AI gets for me, the more I would trust that it makes the right decisions. So it's not writ large AI, it's writ small AI. I
Yeah.
actually think of trust, and I think that's, to your point, might be the new influencer because it's easy. It gets rid of the friction.
It's easy. You
Hmm.
don't have to go on a website. I mean, I'm thinking back to our friend Mike Wolf and the Smart Kitchen Summit and the
Mm,
Home Show. And for over a decade now, there have been all kinds of apps that could help you figure out meal planning, what to cook. You could connect it to shopping. But this is a whole different level. You don't have to work through their framework or give so many inputs, right? Once you set up your agent, like to me, coupled with that personalization and less friction, like you're saying, I think that's finally what's going to take the next generation of these apps and things that really haven't taken off.
Yeah. I also
mm.
think there's going to be a fascinating consolidation of information. Like historically, even when you think about technology, it's like we had apps that were like just track my steps and track my whatever, right? But like
Mhm.
we're now in a world where like our toilets are can talk to our refrigerators, right? Like it's like an
Oh,
I'm
I
ecosystem.
don't
not in
like
that
that.
world. My
I
toilet has
don't
never spoken.
know.
I do not live in that world. I'm
My
just want
toilet has an
everybody to
automatic
know
lid, but it does
there's
not
no
interact with my
conversation
food.
happening between my toilet and my refrigerator. Not,
No.
nope, no.
Well, they could talk to
Could.
each other if
Ooh,
you would
that's
let them, if
scary.
you would
That's
ever let them.
scary.
Oh
Kohler
heck, I
has
want
a
to hear
whole
that.
health division now,
Hmm.
which is
Yeah.
sensors to
Mm.
report. So if it starts talking to your insurance company, that could be an
Ooh,
issue.
yeah. Well, I think Kevin,
I'm
that
sorry.
that that is that. I think that there is a nervousness from a
Yeah.
consumer standpoint around, yes, I want all of this to help me, but not monitor me or
Mhm.
manage me. And I think like you think about like we're putting all of our data in a lot of different places, and there's shockingly a high level of comfort from consumers and also a high level of concern around like who owns my data? Who's monetizing my data?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think we've seen so much with like, Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. You see that if you give consumers stuff that they want, that the amount of stuff that they'll give back or the amount of privacy that they will give up is actually kind of surprising. Until that gets the weight of it goes one too far one way, it's like, okay, I will give up what I can. So we'll see how far. Maybe it is the toilet to the refrigerator line. Who knows? But I mean,
Mm.
we'll
Mm.
see. It'll be interesting because you can see all the benefits. If I mean, to be completely sincere about it, if your toilet basically said you're low in these electrolytes,
Yeah.
you're low in these type of things, you need to be eating these things, you need to be drinking these things, you can see the benefit or you're at risk of pre-diabetic because that would
Hmm.
also be a sensor. So yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm stuck. I just can't get past the my refrigerator talking to my toilet or vice versa. It's just so bizarre. So, Sherry,
Oh,
when you think about meaningful transparency, because people think about transparency in so many different ways, and the connection between transparency and trust. What constitutes meaningful transparency in this market? And I realize it's going to be specific to different groups, but from the research you've done, what is meaningful transparency?
Mm. So, let me talk about where it's been to tell you kind of maybe like where we think it is. So, I think, in the past, the transparency was a lot of like credentials, certifications,
Hmm.
etc. Um, it's kind of, kind of moved into more of like, taking things out, right? Like it's like, taking things
Mm,
out that are bad, adding things in that are really, really good, right? That you really, really want. So there's this kind of like, like really good detail about what's in this product and, what it's there for, the functional benefits. I think those have become transparency. And then also the sourcing, right? So this increased
mm,
interest from consumers in like where did this come from and what is its impact on the planet, and that would be everything from soil and climate to packaging, sorts of things. So all of those I think have like increasingly become part of what is being defined from a transparency standpoint. But I would also say it's like a layering too. So like clean labels not enough anymore,
mhm.
and sustainability is not enough. And even we did some work a few years ago where we were looking at like the business case for sustainability, and we found that like you actually had to operate across multiple different messages, pillars of the
Mhm.
environment and climate, etc. Those brands would do 10 times or 2 times as well in terms of performance. So it's kind of that stacking, I think, of transparency, um, information to the consumer.
Is there a particular stack? I know we've talked about several, like the top ones, like would be sourcing, sustainability. Like what's
So
the
that here's the other part that's interesting. It depends. I mean, like we
on the
just did some
audience?
research on demographics, and
Hmm.
higher income people care about more things around the climate and the
Hmm.
sourcing. You know, lower income people generally they're going to lean more into like actual historical brand trust, legacy sorts
Hmm.
of things. So it
What they know.
depends. Younger consumers have higher expectations. We know they've been driving a lot of the shifts that we're seeing is just
Hmm.
this higher expectation from the younger consumers coming into the marketplace.
which is it puts a lot of pressure on a brand because as you get all of these smaller cuts of demographics, building the right stack, it becomes more and more difficult. And it's almost unsustainable for a brand to be able to know the right stack, the right consumer, because it gets cut smaller and smaller.
Right.
I don't know.
I
Yeah.
think that's a
Well,
great point because again, that infinite proliferation of microcultures and sources to that point. Some research we did several years ago demonstrated that the intent to be transparent bought almost as much goodwill as the actual
Mm,
transparency, right? That the belief that this is an organization or company that is transparent
yeah.
oftentimes was sufficient. So
mm,
there are a lot of other places where you see companies chase this they go down this path, right? It's pick your topic, pick your issue,
mm,
and they go down to such an incredibly granular level, believing that more and more and more will ultimately buy them loyalty when in fact, probably the first step or two is sufficient. So, Sherry, I'd be interested in Kevin, your perspective. All of you have done work in that area. I would be interested in your perspective on that because we've seen this in sustainability, we've seen it in animal welfare, we've seen it in,
Mm,
right? So, I'm going to chase this as far as it possibly goes because in so doing, I'm going to engender greater trust. I don't necessarily know that I believe
mhm.
that hypothesis.
Kevin, I'm curious on your perspective, or Susan, you like your reaction to that.
Yeah, what I've seen is I've seen the exactly what Charlie said, which is it's more that upfront piece about being willing to be open and showing that openness to we're not perfect, but we're trying kind of attitude. But yeah, I don't know if you have I think you have diminishing returns with the more you
mm,
add
Great
to it
point.
because you're
Yeah.
you're cutting into your margin at the end of the
right.
day. But I don't know, Susan.
Well, I always go after critical mass, right?
Hmm.
The large majority of people, you can get there, I think, pretty easily, like Kevin's saying, with maybe one or two, or maybe none. I mean, it's the comfort seekers. Charlie, you've got the breakout of what's important to people on trust. I guess the thing that I think we've all seen, and Sherry, you're probably maybe you're the closest to this, is I think it's harder for big brands, right? And so because they can't. They have to sell, right? They have to go for volume. And so you see the smaller guys coming in and really driving the innovation in whether it's functional or sourcing or whatever, and they do it better. So I'm wondering if that's still the dynamic you're seeing, that
Well,
big brands are staying broader or buying it and keeping it under a separate brand.
yeah. Well, and I think your point too around just even trust of size of brand, like you're absolutely right. Other than there are people that like do trust legacy brands that are just like, I bought this, my grandma bought this, right? Like like this, but in general, there's a higher level of kind of trust of a lot of these smaller brands, and a lot of them true is because they're often under that umbrella of better for. It's in their
Mm.
ethos, right? So there's just kind of like this, like inherently, like this is what this brand stands for. Um, Charlie, I think so. Your question though around like, does the con what is your thought?
Well, my belief would be kind of similar to Kevin's, is that obviously it's going to be specific to the consumer and specific to the brand,
Yeah.
right? If I have a brand that is identified with certain progressive consumer demands or interests, that will be furthered by continuing to tell stories about this coffee bean came from this farmer on this hill and it was sustainably produced and carried by a donkey that was well cared for to a roasting station that was fired by recycled wood. And then it was taken to you in a bag that you could reuse in a different way so you could have the perfect cup of coffee, right?
Hmm.
Or to your point, those folks are like, I like the center of the store. I'm comfortable with the center of the store. It's a brand I've always been good with.
I
So
like Folgers.
yeah, right.
Yeah. One thing that we've seen specifically around our research in the last 10 years, and really some of the biggest growth in the last, three, is this growth of this segment when we ask them about their sustainability, like behavior, like where do they segment themselves? What we call glamour greens. And glamour
Hmm.
greens are it's about their identity,
Yep.
right? So like there's also this real element of like and we're seeing it, by the way, not just within sustainability, but we're even seeing it in people that are on GLP-1s, like the behavior changes of who they are once they're losing weight and
Mhm.
they're, all of a sudden they're buying more clean label things, they're buying more organic, they're very intentional with their purchases. So I would say too, there's a fascinating element of this, which is like what I care for, right? But then like, what does this say about who I am, or what does it represent for me? And I'll take this a little further on a trust thing. We just did some research on microplastics
Hmm.
and consumer concerns around microplastics, and I was shocked at how high the concern is
Mm.
around microplastics.
Hmm.
And
It's
there was
been in
just
the
a
media.
documentary that came out on the 16th of March, and called The Plastic Detox. And what I thought was really fascinating about that documentary is it talked about fertility issues. And so it
Mm.
made
Ah.
microplastics personal, which is what we tend to see was when things are out here, they're important, but they're also like flexible. But when they're personally affecting or personally identifying, and so I think that'll continue to kind of evolve, just knowing that we've seen that growth of that identity-based group.
Interesting.
Yeah. Reproductive challenges or introducing the idea of reproductive challenges has been a long-standing strategy for those that are opposed to X, what you pick it, right? Because to your point, it's deeply personal, deeply, deeply personal. And so they make that connection. Susan, you mentioned critical mass. Is that the one on Saturday night or Sunday morning? I just wanted
Oh,
to ask.
Charlie.
I'm not
Oh,
sure which one.
Charlie.
Okay, on that note, it is time to transition to our quiz. Are you able to hear it? Excellent. And here's your quiz master, Kevin Ryan.
Oh, my
I,
lapels are not big enough for that
yes.
song.
There we
It
go.
definitely puts the square in 3 Squares,
It
by the
This
way.
is
totally
the first
does.
time we've used that, Susie. So
Also
it's the first time we've
ages
had
the
our
heck
No,
out
own
of
Charlie.
us.
custom music bed for the 3 Squares quiz, which I got some
We've
comment at our board meeting last week, Kevin, from somebody who goes, I love your podcast, especially the quiz. So that's what I hear frequently. That
Sorry, Sherry.
the
We
quiz
just
is
lost a younger demographic based on that song, but that's okay. They were like, "What is this? What is this? I never even heard this song." Yeah, they don't remember like staying home sick from school
Well,
and watching
Jana wrote
like.
that.
The
Jana
price
wrote
is
that and
right.
recorded it for
No,
us.
it's
So it
See?
was
great. It's
it's a
awesome.
custom bed just for
Thinker.
us.
Oh, it is
So yeah,
awesome. No, but it
yeah,
definitely speaks to that 70s game show. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Quiz. Well, the theme this week is just because here in Colorado, spring is definitely sprung, and I mean we've got like flowers and leaves and all that kind of good stuff. So it's all about spring.
Okay.
So first question, and Sherry, please join along. Um, Early spring beets are often described as having a deep, earthy, some would say even muddy flavor. Science has discovered that this isn't just your imagination. Beets actually contain compounds that trick your brain and taste buds. What is actually in the beets that's going on? Is it A, the deep red color of the beet is caused by a high concentration of iron oxide, the same chemical that gives rich dirt its distinct smell? It's also rust. B, spring soil is water saturated, and the young beet's vascular system pulls microscopic clay particles into the cell. That makes the dirt flavor you taste actually dirt, or at least clay. Or is it C? When ground temperatures fluctuate in the early spring, the beet converts complex starches into something called xylose. This is a specific wood sugar that carries the tannic, musty aroma of decaying bark and forest floor. Or is it D? Beets contain something called geasmin, the same chemical released by soil during a spring rain, which is why eating them mimics the smell of wet dirt after a storm.
Now remember, Sherry, one of these is true, and he made the other three
Oh
up.
my gosh, I can't believe this.
Every month,
Yes,
every month.
every month.
So which is it? Is it A, iron oxide, B, the
Water
actual
saturation.
pulling up of actual pieces of clay? Is it C, the xylose that smells like the forest floor, or is it D, geasmin, the smell of spring rain?
Go on A.
A, iron oxide.
I'm gonna go
Charlie or
see.
I'm going C
C.
as well. I'm going xylose.
You are all incorrect. It's actually geasmin. It's the smell of spring rain. So humans are very sensitive. In fact, we are more sensitive, according to some rules, we are more sensitive to that smell of something called geasmin, sometimes called petrichor, if you've ever heard that term. That smell of
Nope.
you get when rain is coming. We are more sensitive than that than sharks are to blood and water. We are
No
very
way.
sensitive to it. But it is a chemical that is found in the soil, but it's also found in beets. That's what you
So are
What
taste.
is
sharks
it?
sensitive to jasmine?
No, blood.
Oh, oh, blood.
It's
Okay.
just
All
that
right.
they need such a tiny amount in water
Right. No,
that
no.
you can smell it
Yeah,
100 miles
yeah.
away. We can smell
Right.
it that far away.
Does
Okay.
How is it spelled? How's Jasmine spelled?
Geasmin is spelled Geosmin. Geasmin.
Hmm.
But petrichor is actually a really cool word because petrichor actually means blood of stone, blood of the stone. So Petra, stone, core, ichor is blood. So petrichor is the blood of a stone. So
How
really
about
cool word.
that? I didn't
All
know
right,
stones bled.
2, 0 so far. Okay.
Yes,
In
zero.
the 1920s, I'm just keeping score. In the 1920s, the mayor of New York City briefly issued a citywide ban on artichokes during the spring harvest. Why did he take this drastic action? Was it a moral panic? He believed that the vegetable artichoke acted as a dangerous aphrodisiac that led to a rise in immoral behavior during the city's crowded public spring festivals and parades. Was it B, toxic scare? A widespread fungal blight had made the outer leaves of the spring harvest mildly toxic, leading to short-term health emergency and a temporary seizure of all the stock of artichokes. Is it C, economic waste? With the tough economic times of the Depression, the mayor, who personally considered the artichoke a useless weed, argued that the city could not waste public funds on inspecting or regulating the non-essential produce. Or is it D, mafia? The local mob, led by the artichoke king, had seized total control of the supply chain and was using the massive seasonal profits to fund a network of illegal gambling houses. So moral panic, toxic, economic, or mafia?
Well, you know what I am going to say, Kevin.
I don't know.
If it has fungal in it, I'm going there.
Fungal, that's true. Fungal, okay?
Oh, so I was gonna go moral.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm gonna
moral
go more.
panic.
I'm gonna go moral
After-
panic because it's just so bizarre.
I'm
Okay,
gonna go
you are all
mob.
incorrect. It is mob.
Oh,
Oh,
It's the mob. In
jeez.
1935, Mayor LaGuardia banned the sale of artichokes because the Terra Nova crime family had a monopoly on the market, and they would buy the entire spring crop and then sell it back at a 300% markup.
So
no.
Yeah.
it's like the lime cartel.
Yes. Right.
There's a
There you
lime
go.
cartel?
No, there was a lime cartel. I
Yeah.
mean, there was, and there may still be. I don't know, but that was
Wasn't there a
blamed
milk
for.
cartel?
There was. Yeah, there was. We
Yeah.
don't talk about
So
these things. They may still be active.
Oh.
I mean, nothing against it. Nothing against it.
you might find
Yes.
a Holstein head under your pillow.
Or an artichoke. I could find an artichoke in my bed. Who
Yeah,
knows?
there you
I'll
go.
take an artichoke over a
Question
Holstein head.
3. According to legend, during the spring fasting season of Lent, 17th century monks in Germany were not allowed to eat solid food. To survive, they brewed a special heavy beer called Doppelbock. How did they get the Pope to approve this strong alcohol during the religious fast? Did they A, they told the Pope the beer was actually a mix of botanicals and overly fermented communion wine, not fit for the sacrament, claiming it was both frugal and spiritual tonic rather than a recreational beverage? Was it B, they claim one of their brethren had had a vision that the carbonation bubbles in the beer were the breath of angels, and therefore the liquid
Whoa.
contained no actual substance, so it was okay?
No. Yeah.
It's C, they sent a barrel to the Pope, but it spoiled and turned sour during the trip, and the Pope tasted it and decided the drink was punishment, and he gave them his blessing just to go ahead and drink it? Or was it D, they paid a liquid tax for every gallon brewed, which was used to fund the construction of a new cathedral in Rome, essentially buying his silence?
Oh, D.
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
D.
I'm gonna go D as well. And anytime we get a chance to pay the Pope,
Susan?
we're gonna go for it.
Well, that's probably right. I'm going to go the craziest. It's Breath of Angels, and I'm going to talk to my mom's charitable organizations to see if they could make that into a medallion or
That
something
would be really
to
cool. But you were
bless
all
us.
incorrect
Not
again.
again.
They sent a barrel to the Pope and it spoiled, and he was like, "Who would drink this?" And then he was like, "Yeah, go ahead and drink it if you really
man.
want to."
Oh,
And they just continue to drink it. Yeah. So,
okay.
all right, next one. Most people think chocolate bunnies are hollow to save the company money. While that is part of it, there is a much bigger reason why a solid chocolate bunny would be a disaster for a big brand to sell. What is it? Is it A, solid chocolate bunnies are taxed at a higher rate as chocolate than hollow bunnies, which are taxed as non-chocolate confectionery, the same as if they were filled maybe with nougat? B, a solid bunny would take far too long to cool down in the factory, causing the chocolate to bloom or turn gray and grainy as the fat separated from the cocoa. Is it C, if the bunny were solid, there's a high likelihood that the ears would snap off during the vibration of shipping because the neck would be too heavy to support the dense weight of the head. Companies could add a lot more packaging, and some do, but that's really expensive, so most just sell hollow bunnies. Or is it D? Research actually shows that parents and kids actually prefer hollow bunnies for several reasons. The acoustic snap of the hollow bunny is significantly more satisfying, and overall, it's less messy to eat.
It's easier on your teeth.
Right. So is
Hmm.
it A, the tax, B, cool down in the factory, C, the breaking of the ears and shipping, or D, people just actually end up liking it?
I'm going B.
gotta spread our bets here. What did you go,
Okay, I'm
Susan?
going B. Cool
You're
down.
going. Oh,
Cool down.
Yeah.
I was gonna go with B. That sounds like a
Oh,
logical one.
sorry.
That's okay.
You can go with B too if you want.
But then we're all gonna be wrong again. All right, I'm gonna go B. Chocolate bloom.
And I'm gonna go consumer preference. D.
Okay. B is correct. A solid bunny would take too long to cool down. Yeah. You actually would. It takes a long time, and it really takes some special work to kind of keep it from blooming in the factory. Okay. Last question. Before we had safe modern food coloring, people still wanted green beer for spring celebrations like St. Patrick's Day and Easter. They used to tint it for Easter.
Hmm.
In the early 1900s, how did bartenders achieve the bright green color? Did they A, bartenders would squeeze the juice out of handfuls of fresh lawn grass and clover, mixing the bitter green chlorophyll directly into the pale ale? B, they use absinthe, a powerful and often illegal green liqueur which gave the beer its color but also caused some customers to suffer from hallucinations. Did they C, they allowed the beer to sit in unlined copper pots for several days until the metal oxidized and turned the liquid a distinct mossy green color? Or D, they added a drop of iron bluing, sometimes called laundry bluing, because it's a toxic chemical used in commercial laundries to make white clothes look brighter and more vibrant. So
Ooh.
grass, absinthe, copper pots, or bluing.
Wow.
I think it's either grass or copper pots.
I'm going copper pot because I
I
think
feel
it's going to take a lot to squeeze juice out of grass.
yeah. Copper
Okay, if you
pot or
guys are going copper,
absinthe.
then I'm going to go grass. If nobody else is going grass,
Okay.
I'll go grass.
You're all incorrect. It's bluing.
Oh,
Laundry
no.
bluing. Yeah, and it's really not good for you, but they still did it, and it does turn it slightly green. So yeah, that was the thing.
Oh,
It was common. Bluing was very common to be used. My grandmother used to use bluing in our whites, so it was very common to
yeah.
see, and people would
Really?
put it in and it turns green. So I believe
It's a
who
tie.
won?
Susan and
It's a
I tied.
tie on one. On one.
No, I got
Congrats.
two.
I thought you got one.
There you go.
So you can join us again next time on 3Squares with Quizmaster Kevin Ryan.
Oh, those were hard.
They're hard. They're always hard. Every month they're
Very
hard.
hard.
Every month they're hard, but he just keeps coming up with them. I don't know how he's done it for like 5 years. So it's pretty darned
No,
impressive.
we
Oh,
I
never
spent
win.
too long on it.
Like
yeah.
we never win.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
0 or 1 or
Yeah, it's very hard.
He doesn't.
Very
He
hard.
never. He does not let up, Sherry.
Now
He
he's
does not
now
throw us
he's
a bone.
he's like working us because he knows you too. So he's like, okay, I know,
Yeah.
I know. If I say a
Hey.
Breath of
scientific
angels.
name,
That's right. That's right. There's
That's
something
right.
there. Sherry, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And thank you for joining us for this edition of 3Squares, our March 2026 edition. Remember, if you'd like to correspond with us, you can reach us at 3squaresmail@gmail.com, the numeral 3, squaresmail@gmail.com. We will see you again in April. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.